you're shattering, shattering the part of me, and I can take it. My heart is so hollow, the blood has an echo inside of my veins. My heart is so hollow, your voice is an arrow, making the pain. My heart is so hollow, hollow, hollow. My heart is so hollow, hollow, hollow.
Hello, friends.
Hello.
Welcome to Authortube Chat. I have Kate. She's here with us.
Hello.
Kate's Instagram is up above her noggin.
Ooh.
I did not link her down below, probably, because I am terrible at filling out the thing, but maybe she might be down there. I don't know. I even put us like a cool Authortube Chat right there.
I like it. Yeah.
I made us pretty.
No.
Guys, I even put in questions. Like, I'm prepared.
We're freaking ready to go. And I'm excited to hear all your opinions on these things.
Me too. I have to turn you back up because I had to turn you down because that song was real loud.
That's how you get pumped. Just blast the music.
Miss Becca is here. Welcome, Becca. This is probably the perfect one to come in on. Today's conversation is going to be great, I imagine. So it's a great time to come in.
We're excited.
We have a Merlin. Like, Merlin was excited. She showed up.
Yeah.
Hello, RK, and a Kate, and a Wallace, and Thebes, and Rodney, and Zara's listening to us on mute, which means she's not listening to us. That's not a sentence. She's watching us on mute and will watch later. Can I help you? Okay, cool. Speaking of cool gamers here.
Hey.
My phone wants to know how it can help me. Hello, Shay. No. It wants to know if I want to watch Don't Lose Your Cool Game, who is cooler. Okay, phone. Whatever you say. Hello, Barrett. Hello, Grape. Breasties. She called us breasties. Great.
You gotta open with that each time now.
It's forever. Just, hello, breasties. Just talking to the boobs. That's it. That's all we got. Hello, Kate. Hello, Miller. And hello, JC. As always, with Authortube Chat, when it coincides with a book club, we will be discussing some topical conversations for the beginning of the live stream, and then towards the end, we'll go over the group book, because you may or may not have read it. I hope you did, because it was a fantastic read.
Yes.
Theoretically. It was not the best book I've ever read, and I didn't love it. But, like, the topics and, like...
It's thought-provoking. It stays with you. Like, I wanted to tell everyone about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't hear Merlin purring because I have my headphones on. So I know she's doing it because she's just rubbing her face on it and purring because that's what she does. Who needs a scratching post when you could just set your microphone stand out on the middle of the desk and let the cat scratch themselves? I mean,
yeah,
clearly. Can I help you? I'm not here to pet right now though. Like, we're busy. Like, don't make me do that thing that you don't like. I'm gonna do it.
Cuddles. Oh, the cuddles.
And then she gets mad and leaves sometimes.
She's like, I'm gonna get you with this tail now.
I think she is. I gotta find my mouse. I lost it. Oh, it's over there on the other screen. Hello, Laura. There she is. The way I didn't know what that sound was. Yeah, it's just Merlin rubbing her face all over the microphone and purring because she's a goof. She's back. She's doing it again.
That's so cute.
So, anything you would like to start off with, Kate, before we get to
The topic.
this question?
No, we can dive right in. I'm ready.
Okay. So my first question for those of you who are here is, have you heard about the Bad Art Friend article? I'm sure you have if you're part of Authortube. But like a very small snippet of the conversation is basically like someone donated their kidney and was like very braggy about the fact that they donated a kidney. And someone else who was like not necessarily in their friend group, but in like a similar writing circle, took that braggy person's character and put it into a book, a short story, I believe.
Yeah, took the act of this character donating the kidney, so the story of the donation, and put it into it.
Yeah, and Alexa has a great video about it, and so does Jess, on the story. So when that story was super popular, that was when the book, the plot, was first mentioned to me, and I was like, okay, so the plot is about a guy who steals someone else's plot and writes a book and becomes famous for it. So that was what made me want to read the book. And during reading the book, I was like, this would make a great chat topic for the chat. So, I mean, it is the summary. It is what it is. Like, somebody donated a kidney and they were very smug about the fact that they donated a kidney. And are you a bad art friend or a bad, what would you say, contemporary? Like,
yeah, like
they're part of your contemporaries, your group of,
yeah,
because it's like, it's not a colleague because you don't necessarily work together when you're in the industry. But yeah, like if Kate donated a kidney and was a total smug bitch about it, and I was like, I'm totally writing a book about this smug lady who donated a kidney, would I be a bad friend for turning her into a caricature and putting her in a book?
that is
because there was some exaggeration, but also
here. Thank you, Phoebe.
Appear. That's a great word. Look at you coming up with words like a writer.
You know, my favorite part about this is that I'm pretty sure Bad Art Friend was back in, like, don't quote me, but I think it was like back in September or like August, or
it's been a minute. Yeah.
It's been a minute, and it has stayed just in like some corner of my brain still. Some part of me just keeps reminiscing of. In the story, yes. And the story that one of the friends, the peer, wrote, that is the case. In the real life version, it's a little bit questionable on
It's
all
foggy.
Yes.
It's very much like, I donated a kidney and you haven't asked me about it. We've been here for 5 minutes. Why didn't you ask me about that kidney I donated? You should want to know because I donated a kidney.
But at the same time, see, this is why it like stays in the brain, because at the same time, it was like, well, why are you still in the Facebook group of this woman where it's supposed to be like her close friends, you know, talking about this and supporting her and everything, and you not saying anything, and then you writing a story about it and never bringing it up to her. And it was wild.
Right. I think a lot of it was like the backpedaling and the lying about it in that story itself. So
Yeah.
that's like that story in a nutshell.
Yes.
But I feel like while that's not going to be the main topic of conversation for the evening, I feel like that was a good starting point because I needed to know if you've heard about it, because that's what led us to reading this book, which led us to the topic of conversation.
Yes.
So, do you think using a plot told to you by a contemporary, because that was the word I used earlier, is plagiarism? Or do you think it is theft? Or neither?
Oh, this is such a good
plot
question.
only.
Plot only. And here's the other part that's hard for me is like, how detailed was this plot? You know what I'm saying? Like, did they give me their entire Save the Cat beat sheet plot? And that's what I stole? Or did they give me like a beginning, middle, end? And I was like, that's a general, 3 bullet point what they're writing. And I was like, I write stuff like that. Like where are we going with this? How detailed is the plot being told to me? But I always feel like plagiarism is such a hard word, because if you went, like in school, it's drilled into us what specifically is plagiarism. And usually it is the stealing of specific lines, or like a, chunk of a paragraph and the concept in full. And so it's kind of a tougher, I think it's like plagiarism you can prove in court sort of thing. So
Right. Because it's important to note that you cannot copyright a plot.
you can't copyright a plot or a title.
You can copyright the actual words of the book, but you cannot copyright a plot.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it would be hard to prove that it was plagiarism. Is it a story theft,
Is it a
though, in your
story
opinion?
How do we define story theft? Are we saying what we think Bad Art Friend was?
No, you. Like, if in
Oh.
general, like for you, if someone took your plot of if you told someone like beginning, middle, end, like the things that you tell on YouTube, maybe not like what you tell when we're like fully going into it, because I think a lot of people know a lot about like Project Death in particular.
Yeah, I talk a lot.
I talk about for a long time.
Yeah.
But like I don't talk a lot about like my witch boarding school. Like people know about it. They know it exists. And they know that my like main idea was to focus it around like an alternate universe where all types of magic that we read about is true.
Yes.
Okay. So if someone took that and made their own story,
premise, right,
and took that, would you consider that to be story theft?
Here's the thing. I wouldn't. No, I would not. But would I side-eye them constantly and never tell them anything again? Yes. Like,
Yes.
I would know that I couldn't, like, it's a premise. You really can't, things have been done before. That's your concept that you just explained is not necessarily the first magic alternate universe school that may have like, a little bit of a smidge of the other magics involved and talked about, right? So it's not the newest thing, or like it's not whatever. But if I heard you say all that and then I go and write the story, if you didn't want to be my friend anymore after that, I'd be like, I probably deserved it. It's kind of like
I probably did this to myself.
Yeah. So I wouldn't call it story theft, but yeah, it's a breach of trust. Look at Phoebe.
I'm going into the questions
so many
or to our answers. Yeah. So Ray says theft. Yeah, really annoying about donating the kidney for sure. Yeah, copied the letter word for word. Absolutely. If they only said some tropes and you are inspired, I'm with you on that. Like, if it's just a little bit, then Natalie's getting deep over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is rough. Yeah, someone's wacky behavior. It's kind of the same as like basing a character off of a person you know in real life, which is a question that I have coming up here in a little bit.
Good. I was like, how detailed are we getting?
I have lots of questions.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I think this Barrett is exactly what Kate was saying. Like, I would shade them for all time, but also it's not necessarily.
It would be a different story, yeah. But I'm gonna judge you.
It's only theft if they do it better and or make more money than I would have. Being a bad peer, 100%. You are the bad art friend, my friend. And that's part of it too. People don't realize they're stealing. And you, my friend Becca, will understand greatly one of our later topics of conversation. Two friends who purposely plagiarize off each other to drum up drama and help both of their careers. Like bad art friend, but on purpose. See, now that is very interesting, Wallace.
I would definitely read the New York Times article about that and the subsequent articles when everyone figures out what you'll have done.
Right.
Totally.
Where someone like realizes what you did.
Yeah.
I don't think it's plagiarism, but I would more than side eye if I tell you a plot and you never said anything in that moment and come back with a plot on it. I mean, you're not wrong.
So this is the hard part, is how inspired can you be by someone else's life event and write a story off of that?
That's also a question.
I knew it had to be, but like that's, you know, and then you get into the whole topic of like, what is historical, like the historical romance or historical fiction genre at that point, and how far removed do you have to be from the person, and do you have to be removed?
And Grape's calling out Wallace because she thought they were going to write that, and now Wallace is giving everyone the idea to do it. See, you guys. Let's see. Do you believe? Actually, let's skip that one for right now and go to this, because it's more. If you write a fictional story based off of true events, do you think you have to notify the people involved in said true events?
So I read a lot of like narrative nonfiction, where it's usually like comedians or like humor writers, and all they do for the most part is change the names or change like specific things that might point to a person. So they might change the city in which it happened and the name of the person, but keep all the rest of it. And so for me, I mean, in theory, that person is then it's actually involved. So it's their version of like, I was there and this happened usually for narrative nonfiction. But gosh, it really depends. Like if I just see, what if I see a tweet and I think it's funny and it was based off of this person's story and, you know, a real life thing that happened to them and I put it in there, you know, I don't know.
I think it would have to be more of like, for me to feel like it was important to tell the person, it would have to be larger than just like, I seen this person at the grocery store and they did something, or someone made a tweet. And it would be like, if I spent a month at your house and like watched, I don't know, whatever you people do over there, but like if there was something, like, you know what I mean? Like if there was something zany or weird going on and I wrote a whole book about it and published it and didn't tell you that I was publishing a whole book about your life, that's a bit much.
Yeah. I think it's how close am I to the person and how involved was I, period. Like how circular am I?
How much of that person am I putting into the book?
Yes. Is it just an event that happened? Like I saw a weird car crash and I put the exact weird car crash in something? Or is it like, I know the person who was in the weird car crash and I wrote their entire family history into my book and changed basically nothing except for two things, you know, like but I think I saw Becca say that she would want to be told, if I was the person in that true event, I'd want to tell it. So there's the other problem is that person's story, like, do they have the first right to tell the story? And if they don't, but how long is that time period to be like, well, I guess they're not going to tell it, so I get to.
Also,
what do you think, Jessica? Also a question?
Thoughts and future questions.
Okay.
I had a lot of questions. I was prepared. To answer your question, Charlotte, for rolling in, this is not a discussion of the Bad Art Friend article in total. We read a book called The Plot for the book club, which was about someone stealing the plot of a student of theirs who died. So similar stories, kind of ish, but not the same thing.
Yes.
Natalie says that she watches a lot of news story that inspire the flash fiction.
Yeah, all the Florida person stories. You could write an entire book off of Florida people. Like,
do you know why Florida news stories are so much weirder than everyone else's?
Isn't it something about how like their media outlets are allowed to, you tell me.
Yeah, it is that. It's that in Florida, the way that their laws are written, they can release information about ongoing cases if a news reporter like calls in and asks about it. Whereas like in every other state, they don't. So like we don't get the zany stories because you can't like call the police station and be like, yo, did you have anything weird happen last night?
Right, right.
So that's part of it. Total stranger, no. But if you know them personally, yes.
Oh, excellent point.
This topic of conversation for later, Wallace. I got you. I too also think about it from the perspective of is it like my brain left, like the whole thought just was like it was there and then
Okay, well, I want to add on to this a little bit just because there's a whole Pam and Tommy thing that's on Hulu right now, and Pamela Anderson has come out and said, like, I think something about, like, I do not want this. I have not wanted this. And so what do you do when you've made an entire mini series or show, but the person who's directly involved and still very much alive does not want you to be doing the thing? Like, film takes an entirely different, kind of like the music industry. I don't think that they care as much. It's just whether they can put like based on a true event or different things like that. I'm sure Becca can correct me on this, but
right. And I think for me, I think if you're writing a tale about a specific like if her name wasn't in it, like if her name wasn't the title and she wasn't a main character and she was just like this weird side character that had like a 10-minute line and she didn't want her part in it, I'd be like, you know what? This is how it was told to me. But when it is your life, you are a main character of the events that happened, and they're only taking the side of this other person or an outlier person and like making up maybe what happened. I think that is completely unacceptable. It's her life. And if someone did that to you in your life, you would be absolutely pissed, and she has every right to be. So that's maybe it. Oh, interesting.
There's a couple songs with celebrities like full names as the thing, but I like some.
It's true.
Yeah. I will say that I do appreciate Taylor Swift, young Taylor Swift, taking it to like a whole new level and putting coded messages to really find out who it was about in some cases. Like,
I have a friend of mine who was a musician, but is now she's like a chocolatier and I think maybe a pastry chef. It's been a minute. And she definitely like has written things about like famous exes and very cleverly hidden either like the names or the initials of them in the title or in the song itself. That like as her friend I see and go but like a random person would never know.
Yeah.
It's fun when you get to laugh at things. Let's see. This is a very good point. Becca says, I had a friend who had the idea for a specific script before she died, and I've always wanted to write it to honor her. Ooh, and then I left it. But I'd give her credit even if she didn't write a word. I am with you on this 100% because if I ever publish my adult high fantasy, even though it is a completely different story from what it was when I started writing it 15 years ago, a lot of the beginning of that story was me just having like weird theoretical discussions with my friend Meredith, who passed away in 2009. And I 100% plan to dedicate that entire book to her, because even though it's got very little of what we discussed in the beginning in it, I never would have got to where I was to get to where I am now had I not had those discussions with her about like theoretical astrophysics. Like she was a very intelligent person. And although it has like nothing to do with the plot now, it did before. So
well, and I wonder how often so many of these issues could be resolved, at least in the book world, with putting someone in the acknowledgement section. Like so many people touch a book, whether it's your family supporting you or your friends bouncing off ideas at a coffee shop or your actual editor going through that, or your CPs or someone who gave you like the best line of the book. Like there's so many things that people put in those acknowledgements. It would be interesting to be like, oh, this person inspired this bit. Like I don't know.
And there are some authors that do that. And also sometimes in film, you'll see it like in the credits, like blah, 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 whatever, special thanks to these people, whatever, because it's a thing. I remember what I was thinking of earlier that I forgot.
Okay.
If you're writing about a specific place, like if you are writing about a high school and you base it exactly off of your high school, like to the name and everything, are you required to let your high school know that you wrote a book set in their school? Like, is a place the same as a person?
Right. I can't imagine. Yeah. We need like a lawyer in here to
I need a lawyer.
A literary lawyer to tell us.
That's true.
Yeah, and they claim, yeah, that's true. Lots of court cases ongoing still in the music world about different bits that were inspired taken from, or chords. And
you get into like the Olivia Rodrigo of it all, where she's got songwriting credits on songs that because she was inspired by other artists or because she took like a tiny piece, and artists have been doing it for years, but for some reason everybody's giving this girl a hard time. I mean, and can a band sue itself for like, hello Nickelback, you use the same 3 chords for every song for like 20 years. Can you sue yourself for stealing your own work? I don't know, but maybe you should look into it. This is fair. I want to write about my experiences someday, and I feel like it doesn't matter how long I wait to tell it. It's mine also. But once you put it out there, it's different. Fair. She named chocolates after them. I mean, that would be interesting. You know? Yeah.
I mean, there's so many disclaimers on the first, like the front flap of a book or something. Maybe not the flap, but the first couple pages where it's like, what's the line where it's like, any and all events that seem like they're real are actually just like a fictionalized version, and not like, don't hate on the author. Like, I'm gonna find the line now. It's always in fiction too.
I'm going to guess that Stephanie Meyer didn't get permission from Forks High School to set Twilight there. I mean,
well, and then you get into the whole like 50 Shades of Grey and the different ones that like basically were originally a fan fiction and then they just changed like minute details.
50 Shades of Grey was fan fiction of Twilight. The Mortal Instruments is fan fiction of Harry Potter. Like, where does this go?
Okay, yeah. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or person, living or dead, is coincidental. So always disclaimer.
Always a disclaimer. Wallace says, I was recently talking to a faculty member at my old high school and mentioned my book was set there, and he got really flustered and seemed worried that I'd written a book bashing the school. Fair.
That's so sweet of him, though. The thing that I would ask
of the program.
Sorry.
As someone who went to school to study audio engineering and production, I always bring up Nickelback and their 3-chord lifestyle. So, what were you saying, dear?
No, I was just saying that I would totally bash on my high schools if I was raised. So sweet of Wallace's teacher, though.
Dun, dun, dun. Do you believe two people can take the same plot and write different stories?
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you and I were given, I think even if we were given the same like beat sheet, like even if it was down to that level, I think our stories would be different. I think we'd bring different things to them. And I think if the plot was even looser, like just 1-2 twist conclusion, I think they would be a lot different.
For sure. A resounding yes. I can't tell how many zeros that is, but Miranda says a lot percent.
A bazillion.
A bazillion percent.
Mm-hmm.
I have also heard that. Don't know how true it is, but also, could it be? That would be fantastic, actually. I would love for that to be true. Mass-produced books for centuries. We're not unique in anything we create. Piecemeal of other books.
Yeah, it's how deeply do you peel back the plot?
Yeah. Creative, absolutely. I think in this example, like a good way for me to reference this is, I promise not to talk about myself all night. My adult high fantasy was originally set on our world in the Bermuda Triangle. And the reason for the Bermuda Triangle was like, because that's where like the elves and fairies and things that were pushed out of human land were sent, and they didn't want to be found by humans. Like that's why ships and things disappeared there. And I thought that was like super cool and so original. And then I read Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan, which if you don't know, the reason why the Bermuda Triangle is the Bermuda Triangle is because that's where like Charybdis and I can't think of the other monster, but like that's where the monsters live from Greek mythology. So that's why ships go down there. So clearly myself and my best friend Uncle Rick, who we clearly have the same brain and can write the same amount of amazing stories, you know, we have the same plot, but two very different stories.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's like even those movies that like every year there's 2 movies that are like basically the exact same concept. And I remember a year when I saw both of the like, we're just friends, but we're gonna like kind of start a flirtationship and then like it's totally gonna be fine. And they came out like within months of each other, and you're like, yeah, so we've seen this, but it was still different. The actors came at it differently, like, you know, I just
and Becca will tell you that the movie industry is really good about trying to sabotage each other when they do that as well, especially if it's a period piece, because one will take every period costume they can find on the planet, even if they don't need it, just so that the other one has to struggle. She's told me that before.
Amazing.
I think it was in reference to the Three Musketeers, maybe. But I remember that and it stuck with me.
It's gonna stick with me now.
I mean, that's dirty, and I like it.
I do too.
It's a great way to just.
You know what I would read? A romance novel where one of them is in charge of having to go through and like sabotage the other movie, and then the other person's trying to sabotage, and then they keep running into each other, and like no one steal my idea. I'm gonna
write this Hallmark novel. Okay, don't steal my idea. Oh, this is a good point too. Like you can write the same story with the same plot beats and end up with a completely different tone and a completely different story. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Tombstone, Wyatt Earp, Deep Impact, Armageddon. Yes. Wallace accidentally bought a $5 super sticker. Best $5 ever spent. What even is this thing? Is it like a monster thing? Is there a creature?
Avocado.
Oh, an avocado. I can't see it because I'm in the StreamYard. So
I can't tell if it looks like it just like went on a run and collapsed on the ground, and now it's like a I don't know. Why is it wearing a
So
head?
it's like me if I were an avocado and went on a run. Got it. Got it. Same beat sheet, write your own story, and come together to compare. I mean, you're not wrong.
When Miss Brooke Passmore was still doing Authortube videos, she and I would do different drunk writing challenges, and we usually use the exact same prompt and the same time span, and our stories will be completely different. So it's a similar. I mean, it's not totally the beat sheet, but that's how you do.
Also, hello, Madeline. Welcome. And Wallace is also here, and fellow Wallaces. Shader and I have the same prompt and can write very similar stories or completely different in our flash fiction challenge. So fair. Vixen of Fiction. Hello, welcome. Three Musketeers. See?
Got it.
I remember. It stuck with me. Good old Disney. Stealing all of the costumes so nobody else can have them. People love that, especially film fans and readers love when there's tons of a thing. It's true. I mean, if you really love it, wouldn't you love more of it? Like, if you've had one piece of cake and it was really good, wouldn't you want a second piece of cake? It's going to be exactly the same as what you just had, but it's going to be cake.
Yeah. So, like, we enjoy the trend. So, would we get mad at the authors who maybe, like, and not that we can all know trends ahead of time or anything, but it's like, I don't know. That's a tough, not for us. We consume.
Did Matilda and Bug do that for Nano? Like a similar...
I think they did some kind of challenge that was similar to this. Yes.
Was it last year or the year before? Because I think it was when they did like the 24 hours straight thing.
Time as I don't know.
So many things on the YouTubes, and I can't keep up. Stop giving away your ideas, Kate. You have to write that.
Just saying.
To answer the question, what sparked this topic? We, for our group book, we are reading The Plot by Jean Hanff Korelitz. I don't remember. It's a lady, and her name's really long and has a Z in it. That's what I got. But it is about a professor who hears the plot of a story from one of his students, and his student dies, and so he takes the plot and writes it himself. And then, like, several years later, gets a note that's like, I know what you did. You stole that story. So that's what we're talking about.
And thus it
kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
I got to the actual book part, but
okay,
that's true.
This is an interesting thing too, where adaptations, not only were they a huge trend for a while there, but also, is an adaptation stealing? I mean, you're basically taking the plot of the thing and writing I mean, you usually say like it's an adaptation of this. Like, that's a marketing tactic. So when is it, like, usually they're dead and so that it's fine and then you can do an adaptation? Or
I think people typically do adaptations of things that are in the public domain. I don't think they typically do them for things that are newer. Like, I couldn't be like, I'm writing an adaptation of Harry Potter. Like, I wish someone would, but you can't do that. So also, everyone misses your drinking challenge videos with Brooke.
Force her to come.
Where was the Brooke? Hello, Sam.
Hello.
Right, cake. Don't know what's going on, but I want cake.
Me too.
Superhero trend, which I have watched a lot of superhero movies and TV shows, but I think I've only read one superhero book. I don't read a lot of superhero books. It's not my preferred style of media for that topic.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to watch things blow up than read about it. Free market art, yeah. Can only do public domain adaptation. For sure. Okay, next question. What is the next question? What was the last question? Oh. If a friend tells you about a fantastic plot and they die, would you write a story with the plot they'd mentioned? And also, would you give them credit?
I mean, I'd go the Becca route and I would do it and give them credit. Unless they explicitly were like, unless they're the type of person who would hate that. I guess I should know my friend pretty well if they're telling me about all of this stuff. And so I would credit them. Or I wouldn't tell it unless if they were like, no one may do this if I die. Like if they explicitly said it.
I feel like as far as our group chat goes, I have 100% said, if I die, y'all are free to take whatever of my stories and make it your own and move on. Like you can fight over my plot ideas, like the vague plots that you've had, which you have a whole story. So, if I die tomorrow, you've got a really shitty draft of a book just waiting to go over there. So,
but you're gonna publish this one, so.
But if I die tomorrow,
no.
If I die tomorrow, everyone it'd be very ironic because I'm not the one having brain surgery tomorrow, like my sister. So the irony of ironies. Ah, wouldn't it? That would be disrespectful. But if they told you it was okay, or I think you would just have to give them Wallace. Nobody wants a Broadway musical of Great Gatsby. It would be very sad and depressing. Wouldn't it? Also, Heather would like to know, what about a parody? Because what's a line between a parody and plagiarism? Just a very good question that I am not legally licensed.
I was going to say, I think there's a lot of legal definitions of what parody is. And I'm not entirely sure what all that encompasses. But I know that someone's definitely drawn the line there before.
I'd almost feel compelled to as a way to keep their voice and spirit alive. Fair. Superhero trend because I can't keep up with all the comic volumes and series. Also fair. Everyone put a line in your will that says your writing bud can write your book. I mean, that's my plan. My sister knows she gets all my writing ideas when I go. I mean, fair. If I think they'd want me to, I would, but with a dedication that was like, this novel is written for so-and-so who wanted the story to be shared with the world. Fair. Mm-hmm. But you're going to live.
Yeah, Jess.
Am I, though? Am I? There was all those Not Other Teen Movies parody stuff, which there was like Not Other Teen Movie, which is a fantastic movie if you've never watched it. It's great. I love it. It's musical. They sing a song. It's great. And like the this, what is the scary movie? Not as whatever the scary movie ones were.
Scary movie series, yeah.
But I think the difference in those is that it's a parody of the entire genre and not like one story itself. Also think Vampires Suck was a parody that I did go to the movie theater and see, but I remember none of it. So how good was it? I don't know.
I just watched the Kristen Bell Netflix series, which is like The Woman in the Window Across the Street from the Girl in the House or something, which is making fun of all those recent thrillers. And I will say that like it played it pretty straight at times, but also I thought it was hilarious. So it was also a parody, but it clearly had taken from like specifically moments. So
it's a shame to waste a good plot, which is, I think, the exact sentence that the main character of the plot said, that it was a shame to waste a good plot. Because their theory in the book, which we'll talk about later if you're still here when we get to that, like the main character's theory of taking the plot was that it was something that had, and which I don't know that I agree with, but again, we'll talk about later, it was a new story. Like it was a plot that had never been told. It was like this big, like it was a whole new thing. It wasn't one of like the 7 basic plots that every book goes through. So that was his point in stealing the book, was because he thought it was like the best idea ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say that also, I think the bigger thing is if you steal someone's twist, that's almost a worse sin in my book, depending on what the rest of the plot is. But it often feels that plots can be kind of follow the same structure, and the specific twist at the end is usually what makes something a little bit more unique. So,
I mean,
unless
I
you can
have, again, because let's talk about me. I have a plot twist ending that you know, and Wallace and Devasia and Katie know, but no one else knows.
Mhm.
And I've never seen that in the book before. And I don't know that anyone else would do it. And I probably would not be allowed to do it because the publisher would be like, no.
Readers will hate this. And
Readers will hate you.
And throw things
We'll be
at
getting piles of poop in flames on our doors. No, you cannot. So like in that instance, I feel like that is like I'm not saying it's a great plot, but it'd be an interesting one. And if one of you write it, I know that you stole that from me, just so you're aware.
Yeah, yeah.
I will come after you. This is also a good point. Like, not a fantastic idea to write the story because it's typically a person writes something because it is personal to them or it is something that they feel like needs to be written. And it may not be personal enough for you to invest in. So that is a fair assessment. Also, same. My kids have my permission to use mine or have them ghostwritten. That's a good point too, ghostwritten. If you have enough notes for that. That's a good point. Leaving all of my stories, ideas to my daughter to do with what she will. Fair. I think Brandon Sanderson finished Robert Jordan's story, but yes, he
did.
Had enough notes for the last book in the series that they were able to put everything together to finish the book for the fans, which is fantastic. Always keep your notes, people. Phoebe wants to watch that.
You should.
Yeah. Wouldn't write it unless they said I could. But if they didn't say anything, it would be disrespectful. Parody of a genre tropes as a whole is acceptable. Was a great parody. Devasia knows nothing. You were there, whether you remember or not.
So I want to tack on that one of my things is that I'm always a little bit scared because I watch so many Authortube videos and I'm on so many streams and people share stuff. I also share a lot of my stuff very willingly. So it would never be purposeful, but I'll definitely read stuff where I'm like, oh, that's such a cool idea. And I often wonder how many times that seeps into my psyche and is just like a nugget in the back of my brain. And I'm always scared that it's going to come out and be something else. And then someone's going to be like, you stole that. But I won't remember it because it's been years and a million comments on the stream. And I'm just like, you can say something. I might not remember specifically that you said it.
Yeah. If you find out a friend applied your plot twist to their story.
Yeah, yeah.
Grave has plausible deniability because she doesn't remember it. Could never, because I can't even remember what it is. They Both Die at the End, which is a book by Adam Silvera, which I have not read, but I have heard that they both die at the end. But I mean, it's in the title. I mean, just saying. He wrote the last three? Whew, that's a lot of books.
That's such a good question. Because from a legal standpoint, this is hard though, right? Because they will ask you to pull up first drafts of stuff and they'll see the timestamps. If you're ever accused of something, you need to have proof that you did this thing and when you did it, So do you then own the story from that? It's just kind of a hard, most people would say that you don't. I don't know. That's really tough.
I think it also depends on where you live, country, state. But I do agree with Sam. I think in a lot of places it is when you write the draft and you have that proof that you've written it. It is yours, but
one of the points they make in the book, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but they just talk about at what point does an author like own a plot, besides not being able to copyright a plot, but also like because you drafted it and you wrote the plot, like, is that enough? No, usually you have to have published the plot somewhere for other people to consume to be able to say that like someone stole something from you. It can't just be like, I don't know. It's kind of a tough thing. If you never publish anything, but you had all this stuff, you do, yeah. So you'll be asked to pull back where your first draft was and when you'd written down ideas, but I love all the old publishing books that you can still find at like half price books or like discounted bookstores where it tells you different advice.
that's true. And I think that's the only way to own an idea, to own a plot, is if it's registered with the Writers Guild, which a lot of people don't know about, and we only know about because of Becca, because we love the Becca, and you know, don't own the story. You have to have written at least the first draft, and I think it has to be the actual story itself, because you own the actual sentence structure more so than the plot itself.
The idea. Yeah.
It's your words that you own, not the story ideas. I think a lot of this is it's like old advice from pre-computer age.
Yeah, so you'd have a date.
So you would have the postmark would be on it. But now we have that within the computer. So some people are very detailed in their outlines, but I think it's the actual prose itself that you own more so than.
I like Wallace's question. It is an interesting.
I mean,
I think it would go back to like, can you own a plot? Can you actually own a plot? I know Becca said you can register it, but like, again, how detailed does the plot have to be to own it? And then, I think you would get pushback from the book community if someone found out that you'd watched this person's video and stolen their plot. But how much legal trouble would you be in?
It's important to note the words, if your plot is original enough, meaning you can't like make a story that's based off of like Star Wars and Star Trek blended together and be like, this is my plot and I want to register it, because they're gonna be like, this is just Star Wars and Star Trek though. Like, there's nothing here that's original. So yeah, video proof is really interesting. I mean, court of public opinion versus the court of law. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, especially now,
and having more important now. Yeah.
Having a negative opinion from your peers and your consumers can be more detrimental financially than a lawsuit. Because a lawsuit, you pay your money and you move on with life. If everyone hates your guts, you got nothing coming in for the rest of your life. So, and this one is specifically for the Becca. How do you feel this transfers to other types of media? So I know we've had Becca on before for an Authortube chat, and we talked about that like she had written a script for like a half-hour show, and it wasn't chosen for that show, but was later on used for a different show without her knowledge. Do you feel like in other forms of media, because again, it's the idea of it. In Becca's case, yes, I believe it's theft and plagiarism because they took like her actual thing and moved it. But like, if I come to you and I say, I just watched the show yesterday where XYZ happened, and you make an episode of your own show and the same thing happened. Is that plagiarism? Is it story theft? Or is it just like a plot thing? Because they're not stealing your word for word. They're just stealing like your scenes and your plots. And I don't know, but like, what do you think?
I'm trying to remember what song this was. Taylor Swift had a song recently on one of her albums where she basically like is telling a story within the song where she is a character and her friend gets killed by her husband, and so she kills the husband, and basically the new girlfriend is kind of framed, but they can't figure out how she did it, all this stuff. I cannot remember the title of the song, but I was inspired by that song to come up with a novel idea, which is actually not Nobody No Crime. Thank you, Miranda. Nobody No Crime. And I was like, I have an idea for this, which is separate because it doesn't actually follow the plot. But I do wonder if someone wrote out the plot and they made it into a 90,000 word story following more or less the plot of this like 3-minute song. How would that legally, like, there's so much more, it's such a different medium, there's so many more words. I'm curious too. I don't know the answer to your question, Jessica.
As Miranda says, just a walking, talking Taylor Swift encyclopedia.
We appreciate you for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, you pitch a lot of stories to people, and there are a lot of ways that you, especially if you live in like Hollywood where all of that happens, like you have a greater, I would think, a greater chance of someone taking your plot. But again, as we have discussed, you can't copyright a plot. You might be an asshole, but are you being, doing something illegal, doing something bad?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's so different because obviously the book world, you basically have to have almost all of the book completed before, so it's not the same as when you pitch within the film industry. Like you're pitching for, that's the big thing almost, and then you get the okay, and then you get to write the scripts and do whatever in some instances, versus again books, you have to do like almost all of it, and then you can go through the steps. So I think it's a little bit, it's tough.
I own my draft of the story, but someone could steal my idea or plot and write it better. They could.
I think
probably won't, but they could.
Yeah.
Lexi, watch me not ever share another intimate detail about my work in progress ever again. I mean, that's kind of like the fear is, do you share these things? And I think that's why, on one hand, I think that is why a lot of viewers on Authortube are mad at Authortubers, because they talk about how like we don't share as much, and we don't like talk about our writing process in a way that is actually showing them what we're doing, because we're not actually giving the whole story idea. Which, if that's something you're looking for, go to Wallace's channel, because Wallace has a book called This Book Is for October, where she literally tells you like the whole entire plot and everything as she works through the book. She's one of the few people that I've actually seen do that. I think Katie Tastic also did that originally when she was doing like her 9-block story structure. Those videos are probably like 4 or 5 years old, but they are definitely there. But I think that like that's from a viewer standpoint, I think people are like upset with us for not sharing more of our stories, but then we're here and we're like, no.
You'd think most other writers would generally understand why people don't want to share the whole thing. And then once it's published, you don't want to share the whole thing because you want people to read it and not spoil them.
Right.
So it's just
right. Which, God, doesn't it make you want to like, it makes me like want to scratch at imaginary hives. to think. The what of the seen, but not the why. So I have this great plan that may or may not ever come to fruition because, again, let's talk about me. I'm going to talk about Kate here in a minute. But me, at some point in the future, I would like to write like a book on YouTube with the viewers. I've been talking about this for like 2 years. Haven't made it there yet, but I've been talking about it for a long time. Where like I actually take the viewers through every step of the process and then post the book like to Wattpad or something where you can actually read it. Will I ever get there? I don't know, because I have other things that are more important. But I think it would be an interesting way of like seeing how like all of the process and everything goes, because we don't typically do that with books that we're going to publish, which a lot of us, that's our main goal, which that's the thing too. The difference between if you want to publish or not. If you're not wanting to publish, you might be more free willy-nilly with your plots and your stories than what you would be if you do plan to publish. I don't know. Just a thought that I had. But that's a thing that one day I would hope to do. Would you ever consider doing that, Catherine?
I would love to do that because I think it's such a great idea. And I was going to bring it back to Authortube and the YouTube community in general about how we will totally see someone else's cool idea and be like, I want to try that too. And so like the vibe of YouTube is different where you're doing the exact same concept, but your own way. And no one thinks of it as stealing, especially more so if you credit the person and shout them out, right? So just going back to the different mediums, having different kind of vibes for this kind of thing. But I think that would be so fun. I used to do my Twitch streams where you could actually see what I was writing on screen. I more or less have it sort of blurred out now, so you can't fully read it. But I think that would be fun. And I think that would be interesting to get everyone's input and write the story together. LK Mattis says, well, you see a lot of writers on Twitch sharing their work. Yeah. I think it gets people more invested, though, when you are able to share. I read my flashes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Show my writing on YouTube, just a bit of it, making writing videos and document my writing journey. Yeah.
But then we'll have the YouTube video as proof. We need
you. Can't write contemporary romance to save my life. Oh, I feel that. That would be cool. Yeah. Screenplays back in the 90s when it was easier to steal from people who had no money. I mean, you're not wrong. Hello, Eva. Sucks. There are bad art friends out there. I mean, a lot of it too is like, what we've seen is even with published writers who have books that are copywritten, that there are websites that will steal your book and publish it online, and they like put in like ads and things into these pages so that they're making money off of it. Like they've done it a lot with Sabaa Tahir and Lily Manon. I know are two of them that have had it happen a lot. I'm trying to think.
Pirating is fucking wild. It is so upsetting. And I think people are more, I mean, pirating's never good, period. But also I think some people have like a line that they'll cross and they'll be like, well, I can pirate a TV show or I can pirate a movie or I can pirate a book. And it's like the hours that all these people went in to create this thing.
I've literally never. Now, did I pirate the hell out of music as like a 13-year-old on Napster and LimeWire? Sure, because I was 13 and I didn't know any better.
Didn't understand the.
And by the time I was 17, I had friends in the music industry, and I was like, "Whoa, this is insane!" And
And then you don't do it anymore. You realize.
Right. As someone who was trying to be in the music industry, I was like, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do what makes you comfortable. If you want to share, share. If not, then don't. I had my stories posted, but took them down before I told anyone I wanted to fix and publish them. Also fair. Plan to share all of my flash fictions and editing live with input from the chat.
That
Fair.
would be very cool.
Overshare, plus I'm used to sharing because of college workshop, so it's not even a thought in my head when it comes to people stealing. Also, hello, Katie Ann. It would be the All That Glitters world. It would be. Read about a ghostwriter that straight up plagiarized for another romance author? Ooh. Ooh, that hurts. This is my favorite comment. Pirating is bad. Also, writing a fantasy series about pirates. Not wrong.
Hate the pirating, love the pirates. I agree with Devasia. Yeah, sometimes. Or like, it's so tough because it's like, what if you really like the music of a person, but they're also literally the worst person ever? And you're like, well, I don't want to support this person, but also this song was like an anthem in my teen years. Like, what do I do now? There's it's fine.
Why pirate when you could just read fanfic for free? Why pirate when you can get a library card and read the published works for free?
And give back to the author. Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, I literally do not get it.
All I can imagine is if they're from a country where the book wasn't published and they don't have access. And I still think it's wrong. It's just, I guess it is still wrong, period. Do I think it's as wrong? No. It's still wrong.
And I think I have read some from published authors whose works have been pirated who have said, like, as much as I hate it when you do it in a country where you don't have access to it, I don't hate it as much as I do when you're someone who has easily access to it for free and you choose to instead pirate it.
Yeah.
So I don't understand pirating books. Like, I just don't get it. Like,
yeah,
to go to the library. Also, Catherine, your library may still have a CD collection in which you could take the CD to your house and put it into your computer. You would probably have to get like a USB disk drive because your laptop probably doesn't have one. But you could put the CD in there and then upload everything to your iTunes, and then you would have it for free.
I was just spitballing. I'll admit I'm actually really bad about taking the artist's actions in mind, and it will ruin songs for me. As much as I've loved songs, I'm totally the person who's like, I cannot listen to this anymore because my mental image is just the person and what they've done.
I'm just saying.
But you're right. Yes. Yes, there's possibilities.
Libby, Hoopla, Overdrive. Do it.
Cloud
Wallace is a 6-minute walk away from the library. Yeah. It's true. Emily's very close to being published and having her story out into the world. It is currently in my email. But I have to finish reading Kate's book first and then Emily. Priorities. Access for some countries is an issue. It's the only time I don't judge it. I agree. Like, it's not okay, but it's not as bad.
Right, but I understand. That's the other one where I'm like, I just don't understand. Why are you doing what you're doing?
My sister came over with a DVD from movie night and looked at her and said, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
But I will have you know, I still have a Blu-ray player and I still have a Blu-ray collection.
I was like, I think I have an old Xbox. I can still put something into.
And see, my best friend, her and her husband are like huge into movies, especially sci-fi and horror. Like, she's a huge horror movie fan. and they still buy everything on disc, like everything. And it's my job as the overly organized friend to alphabetize their DVDs. Like I'll just come over and she'll make me dinner and I get to hang out and play Mario Kart and alphabetize DVDs.
I will say I also get some weird love out of alphabetizing things.
It makes me so happy. Like I'll come over after like 2 weeks and there'll just be a stack of like 30 movies on the table. They're like, that's what we've watched in the last 2 weeks. And I'm like, great. Let me or what we've bought. This is what we've bought in the last 2 weeks. That's okay. I know how to alphabetize. I got this.
Look at you. Okay, I'll be right back.
You're not to be right back. When Kate comes back, we will transfer over into talking about the book for the book club. But we'll make sure that no one else has any final thoughts or feelings or emotions. As authors, we want the story out there with us getting the credit more. We want the money. Someone else getting the money is not okay because it's like they're getting the credit. That's fair. Use my PS2 for DVDs. I don't have a video game console. I haven't had one since I had like a PlayStation in 2005 because I am not a video game person. I like them. I just can't figure them out. Regina says, it was your older sister, wasn't it? Sometimes. Thank God for PlayStations. Also fair. Australian streaming services are terrible. Fair. We'll have a wall of DVDs to watch when our streaming services go out in the apocalypse. I mean, if they're still electric, we'll be all right. A VPN is so, like, I don't know the ethics of that. Like, I'd have to do more research before I decided if I wanted one or not. So, have a Blu-ray too. I'd like to own physical copies of books and movies. Like, just it's the same deal. Like, I want a physical copy of the movie. I want it. I just don't do it for all of them. I also buy digital copies of movies instead of just like the other thing. But Miss Pac-Man's Maze Madness.
No, but that video was wild.
I don't remember that one, so I probably didn't see that one. But, nobody sees everything.
I was very entertained.
I don't know what the letters on a VPN stand for, Regina, but essentially it's like you can make your internet think that you're in a different country. So, like, if you want to watch a show that's only on Canadian Netflix and you're in America, you can convince your cable that you're in Canada so you can get Canada's Netflix instead of the American Netflix. Essentially.
Yeah.
Virtual private network. Yeah, I'm like, I have no idea what the actual wordage is, but I know what it does.
Same.
I just don't know the legality of it. Kids blurry movies. Blu-ray. I mean, there is that. Any final thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns about the topic before we move into the book? And when we move into the book, we'll talk about like our basic thoughts and feelings before we get into spoilers. So if you are interested in maybe reading the book, you can hang out for a bit and then we'll tell you that we're getting to spoilers before we jump in so that you know when to leave.
Because though the topic is very interesting and continues to cover these what we've been discussing, there are some twists.
There are some plot twists, and if you're interested in reading the book, you wouldn't want to know the twists.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, any comments, questions, concerns, anything you would like to add?
I don't have anything, but I do think I could talk about this for forever. So,
I mean, yeah.
I will have new thoughts in like a day. Just message you.
VPN was helpful when I was in Spain, so I could watch things in English and not Spanish. That is Very fair. Very fair. JC's always here for the spoilers. I mean, that's fair. Oh, a comment popped up. Bye, Lexi. Miss your face. Have a wonderful time at work. God, when someone's talking about going to work, I'm like, is it morning? How long have we been here? What time is it? Was I supposed to go to work? First question, did you read the group book? Did you read the group book, Kate?
I did read the group book. I did finish the group book today, about 30 minutes before my Twitch stream started this afternoon. So, but I did finish.
Bye, Sam. I read it and finished it. I don't know, it's been a couple weeks. Like relatively soon-ish, close, but not. Wow, English.
Relatively recently.
Lois is also leaving. Bye, Lois. But yeah, I read it like at the beginning of the month. It was one of the first couple books I read because normally I read them in January, but I didn't this time around. January was, I think I like read 2 2-star books and 2 rereads in January. It was a rough month for me.
I remember seeing your posts on your Instagram stories, and you kind of posted several of your books reviews at once, and yeah, I just kept saying like 2-star, and I was like, oh no.
I need to go through and post some of the recent ones too because I haven't done that, but you know. Bye, Becca. You should read the book. I think you would really like it.
Yes.
Okay. Basic thoughts. What do you think of the plot?
Oh, gosh. I non-spoiler, I was very entertained throughout the entire book. I was curious what was going to happen, even though I had kind of guessed what was going to happen. I don't know that I always guessed in which way or how it unraveled fully. I did get to, I think I could go back over my footage because I was filming a vlog for it, and half of them is just being vaguely annoyed at the main character and how he went about things and how smug he was, like half the time. And so I had some thoughts about him, but it really only works if he's the way that he is. So I thought it was good. I was entertained. That's all I really want. And I know I'll keep percolating over it. So would recommend.
Bye, breasties. Katie and Grape are also bouncing out because they didn't read it. So they're out. Again, if you haven't read it, you should. It was good.
Yes.
And that's my thoughts are, I read it. I liked it. I didn't love it. It wasn't my favorite book of all time. It wasn't like the best written book. I don't know that I feel like the plot was quite as original as what the author seemed to think it was. So because you not only get the plot as like the book, the plot, where the author steals the book, but you also get like parts of the book that they stole.
The book within the book. Yeah.
The book within the book. Yeah. So I don't feel like the plot twists were very surprising, and I don't feel like the plot was, but it brought this entire topic of conversation. So I think it's an important book if you're an author to read and kind of like percolate on.
Yeah. Just feel your own feelings about it.
Like we did today.
Yes. Yes. Or we will do.
It is not a true story. It is like, it's fiction, but it is like the author, oh God, English language. So the author wrote a story from someone else's point of view of like, they were a professor and a student wrote a book, or no, a student had a plot for a book. They hadn't wrote it. They wrote like 5 or 6 pages and they had a plot and they were like, wow, this is the best plot of all time. Like, and the teacher was like, I'll never write anything that's good. And he moves on with his life because the student was like a total asshole. And years had gone by and they were like, I can't believe I've never seen this book be published and like be super popular, because this book was so amazing and the plot was so amazing that it would be at this point. So they look up the book, they don't find the book, they look up the student, and they find out the student died like a month after their class was over. And so the teacher takes the plot and writes the book himself and publishes it and becomes like super famous, like on Oprah's list, on the New York Times bestseller, traveling all over the world, like super mega crazy popular book that everyone has read. And then he starts getting letters that are like, you stole this, or I know what you did, or I know who you stole this from. And so as that plot line is progressing, you also get little snippets of the story that he wrote that he stole from the student. So it's like it's a story within the story, but it is, both stories are fictional.
Yeah. Have you ever read Evelyn Hugo, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo? So it's all fictional, but it's like where the Evelyn Hugo's telling her story to the journalist. So you have kind of like the journalist plot line and then Evelyn Hugo's life plot line. So it's kind of like you get two things in one, but they're combined. That's kind of like the way it's told.
I am going to go over here and steal this and put her name in the chat because it's a rough one. Jean Hanff.
Yeah.
It's a rough one, so I will put it in the chat for you.
I will say,
and
go ahead.
It's kind of like, I know what you plagiarized last summer.
Yeah.
Kind of is.
Yes. One of the things I actually loved separate from the plot and the stealing was that the first maybe 10 to 15% of the book is basically this professor who had sold his first book and done relatively well, but didn't get any of the press or like the big publishing boost behind him, but it sold okay. And he was like listed as new and noteworthy on the New York Times list and stuff. And then his second book was bad and didn't make sense. And it was a combination of short stories. And then so he lost his agent because he couldn't come up with a third or fourth book that anyone wanted to publish. So he kept trying. So then he has to go and teach writing to make money. And then eventually that teaching job goes away because arts are being slashed and all this other stuff with the recession and blah, blah, blah. So then he has to start doing not side hustle, but he has to be like a freelance editor that he's doing for self-published authors and like all this other stuff. So it was just hearing his internal monologue about how disheartening he found some of the writing process to be, or like this publishing world to be, and how isolating it was. And I thought I thought the main character was, I wanted to fake him a lot of the time, but I thought it was a really interesting discussion for a lot of really true feelings that a lot of writers might experience eventually. You know, you are so excited to be published and then your next book doesn't live up to it and then you can't be published again. And it's like what was once a high, you just look back on in despair. So that part was really
I think part of it for me too was that he's very clearly a literary writer, and he very clearly looks down on anyone who isn't a literary writer.
He's so
like
smug all the time.
He's so smug and thinks he's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. To me, he is like the embodiment of like the main character from The Great Gatsby, who is like thinks he's like better than everybody else. I don't know why that is like my frame of reference, but like I feel like he would be the author who wrote The Great Gatsby, who would be like, I wrote this book and it's so much better than anything else you've ever written, and I'm so cool.
He was definitely a stereotype of a literary author throughout the whole thing. And it's like, it really doesn't, there's not a huge moment of like revelation. I actually texted myself once where like literally 66% of the way through the book, he was like, now it was time to be humble. And I was like,
Now it's time?
Now it's time. It's been past time. So it just was
been the
wild
time.
for me.
I actually, like, my comments were more along the lines of, at like 76% when I started to make notes, and I was like, I have so many theories about what's happening. The plot is interesting. And then my despair at 94%. I knew this was going to happen. Now I don't know how to feel.
Yeah. Can we get into spoilers because they're wild?
We're gonna start talking about spoilers
Okay.
with this next banner.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Were you able to guess who was threatening Jacob? Jacob's the main character, by the way, in case you don't know. His name is Jacob Finch Bonner.
He added the Finch in because he
added the Finch in because he's a literary dick face.
Yeah. Okay. Spoiler time. If you don't want spoilers, you've been warned. I will say yes. I was thrown off a little bit along the way, but actually, when we first meet the character who done did it, I was like, it's fucking her. It's her.
From the minute she hit the page.
Yes, I was like, it has to be her, and it only grows stronger. And I don't know if, like, realistically, if this was a real world thing, I don't know that you would necessarily suspect it. It's just the way that novels have to be written, where you can only introduce so many characters. And so you're kind of like, I wonder why this person's so important right now. Of course, because they have to be at the very end. The thing that actually gave it away, though, was as he's describing the dickhead that he steals the story from, he mentions a lot of the time him crossing his arms. And so when he first meets this character, he notes that she crosses her arms in this certain way. And I was like, unless this author, Jean Hanff, whatever, I'm like, is she doing this on purpose? Because I think she might be doing this on purpose. So that was my first hint to myself. I don't think I guessed the twist of the book within a book as quickly as I did that one.
My thing was, I had questions about I knew it was her because it just had to be her. She was crazy. So, like, she was way too perfect.
Oh my God. Yeah. She was so clearly putting on an act.
And so in love with him. And so, like, I have to, like, she stalked him.
Yeah.
To get in his pants to make him fall in love with her. Yeah. I mean, girl was not, like, she did some pretty devious shit, but also she got her way. So good for her. But also I questioned, like, was she the right age? Was she, like, all of these things? But when you are introduced to her, she introduces herself being like, she's gray-haired, and she's like, but most people can't guess how old I am. The people think I'm younger than I am, or people think I'm older than I am. And I think that is, like, the entire crux of her character.
Yes.
So that brings us to, were you surprised by the plot? So
the stellar plot or the
of the
plot?
The plot of the plot, not the plot of the inside novel.
Oh, was I surprised by the plot? No. How certain things went about, I was a little bit surprised, but not really, I guess. Since you can guess pretty early on who done it or who is threatening him, you basically realize how it's going to all have to play together. So again, there were, like, maybe minor twists, but I was pretty certain what all was going to happen. It was just more of a, like, how are we going to unravel this tale? So it's, yeah, you're trying to figure out more the motive, or, like, how does she intertwine in this story versus anything else.
Since I know that the 26 of you who are here watching have no clue what we're talking about, just, like, a basic outline of this plot of what actually happened. So basically, he steals the story, and he sells it. And like I said, he becomes like this great famous author. And over time, he finds out that the kid that he stole the story from actually stole the story from someone else. And it wasn't that he stole the story itself from someone, but that he stole someone's real life. And it happened to be his sister. So in the story, his sister is written as an only child. So he removed himself from the story and basically told his sister's life story about her like having a child very young and about her child like being smarter than her and smarter than everyone else. And so the insult
forced to have the child by her parents, and she didn't want to have the kid. They wasn't allowed to give it up for an adoption. So she's basically forced for 15, 16 years to raise this child she doesn't want.
Right. She wanted to have an abortion, but her parents wouldn't let her. And they told her that she wasn't allowed to have the child. But then when she had the child, they wouldn't let her give it up for adoption. And they told her she had to raise it, even though they didn't want her to raise it. So her parents were shit to begin with. And then she was a shit parent. And so then you get to her daughter. Basically, the whole plot twist of like the plot that no one has ever thought of is that because they're so close in age, the daughter's like going away to college at like 16. And I think the mom at this point is like maybe 29.
Yeah.
And on the way to take her daughter to college, she kills her. Like stages this accident and then takes her daughter's identity and goes to college and
gets to finally live the life that she'd always wanted
because she was also very intelligent and was going to go to college and be very smart. But because she got pregnant and her parents wouldn't let her make any good decisions for herself, they stopped her from being able to do all of that. So essentially, she then stalks the guy who actually wrote the story and convinces him to fall in love with her. She marries him. And this whole time, like, he's not telling her that he's getting these threatening letters, that she's actually the one that's sending it. And then basically once he gets like so far into it, she kills him too. She poisons him and kills him.
And tells him what she's done.
Tells him what she's done. And basically was like, this was the only way I could get my story back. She like met with him, married him, convinced him to like leave her all of the rights and everything because they were in love and married. So like she upon his passing would get all of the rights to his story and the movie they were making about it and everything. So the only way for her to get her own story back was to kill him.
I would like to also add that so it's interesting the different variations of her story. So it's the real story that happened, her brother's version of the story that the brother tells the 5-page like quick plot summary to the professor, Jacob. And then Jacob's the one who then sells his version, and that's the bestseller. And so we find out that she killed her brother as well. And she also, in her real version, killed her parents. So she killed her brother so that he wouldn't release the story once her brother figures out what she's done to her daughter. And then, yeah, so it's wild.
She killed everybody.
She killed everyone.
Everyone.
Her
parents, her brother, her daughter, her husband.
Yeah. And then she lives on. And this is the thing about how Jacob, the main character, was so smug, because the last chapter of the book is her at, she's giving an interview like to a huge audience, and she's asked these questions, kind of mirrors where Jacob was when he first releases the book to all this press. And she's like, well, one thing I loved about my husband is that, he always said anyone can be a writer. And this is like a theme that he's like casted doubt on, and he was just so shitty throughout parts of this.
He did not believe that anyone could be a writer. He believed that like he was so much better than everyone else and not everyone else could be. And so this is the point like where Miranda says, do we think this book would have actually been a bestseller? And that is my thing too, because a lot of like the plot of a lot of the talk behind why it was a bestseller is because women are so maternal, they would never kill their daughter. And I'm like, have you watched the news? Have you watched the news?
Yeah.
Nobody ever has killed her daughter. Never?
I think it was just so yeah. I don't know that it would have been a bestseller. It could have been like a Gillian Flynn kind of thing. Like, what do I know? But I don't think it was as never been done before as the book makes it out to be. But obviously the book has to do something, I guess. So, oh God, it was so good.
I think the book that was based off of the real life would have been more interesting than the fake book, but we didn't get to read as much of that.
But that
so basically
overall, the real book that we read, so interesting because you get all the variations.
You get all of those into it. So basically what she did with her parents died in a carbon monoxide poisoning. And that was because she knew that there was carbon monoxide leaking out of the furnace. And the alarm had went off when she was home alone. So instead she changed the batteries out into the carbon monoxide detector with dead batteries. And then when the carbon monoxide went into the house, her brother wasn't home and she left the window open to her room so it wouldn't affect her. And then it killed her parents.
But
her
she
and her baby, yes.
Say that like if it had done it, so she leaves the window open, but she's like, honestly, if it had done it then, I would have been fine. So that gives you it gives you a look into her mindset of where 16-year-old, 15-year-old her was with all of this. She was like, this will be worth it.
Right. She was like, maybe I want to die, maybe I don't.
Yeah.
Her brother had been a drug addict, so she killed him by a drug overdose, which I mean is plausible. Her daughter she killed. Like they stayed at this campground on their way to
Georgia.
The college, and they had like a heater with them, and so basically she like knocked the heater over and let it burn her to death. A, because it would make it so that they wouldn't be able to identify the body, and B, because it would look like an accident. The husband she poisoned, but did she poison him with something he was allergic to, or just, she made it look like a suicide.
She made it look like a suicide, and she gave him her pills that she'd been previously prescribed for. And she'd had an alibi for she had to be on this flight home. And so that's what she fed him the soup. And the moment that they said in the story, like, oh, and she always was feeding really good food, I was like, that's how it's going to be.
That was my other note that I made at 80% was like, don't eat the soup, Jake. Don't eat the soup. Yeah, that was the other note that I made. I mean, look at tamp it to the max with tampon. I mean, why not?
I cannot believe that this is the real channel.
I mean, come on, really?
It is not.
But to answer the question of like whether it was a man or a woman, I mean, I don't know, and I don't. I mean, if I look at the photo, I'm going to say it's a woman, but I could be wrong, and I don't want to misgender someone, so. I don't see any like specific knowledge. So this person also wrote, which there's going to be adaptations of the plot coming up. She also wrote.
Oh my God. Sorry. I'm so excited.
Crap, what is it? I think it's called The Undoing, which was originally published as You Should Have Known, which is on HBO with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant and Donald Sutherland. Admission, which was adapted in 2013 for a film with Tina Fey and Paul Rudd.
I did not.
And then several other books, which I'd never heard of her before, but apparently, like multiples of her books have been published.
One of my favorite things, since you mentioned that, was how the character Jacob kept talking about how his like self-effacing comment when asked about like how famous he is now is that, well, famous author is an oxymoron. Like authors aren't really famous. And like which is fair. Like it's not an untrue comment, but the amount of things that Jacob said, it was so interesting because I loved his internal thoughts throughout all of it. But also hated his internal thoughts.
Which you guys are talking about, like, everything is suspicious about what she's doing. I mean, they were done in different towns, in different years, different states.
They talk about the family having bad luck where she's from, and Jacob goes on basically his own detective path to try and put all of this together. And yeah, I think the different states help. And the thing with her daughter, when she actually kills her, her daughter's remains are basically completely ash at this point. Like there's very little of her left after this fire. And she tells the people down in Georgia or around that area that it was actually her sister who died. So if you tried to Google it, it only ever came up as the sister, and everyone back home just knew that the daughter had gone down to college and wanted out of the town. So it was kind of like, compared to other stories I've read where I'm like, these people are dumb-dumbs, I was like, you know what? I think she was smart with this. She was smarter.
It was like this very small, like, backwoods town that did not have, like, a huge police force. Like, there would not have been the people to, like, check on a murder. And it had happened, like, the forestry official was like, I'd seen it before where, like, a family has, like, he said, you know, technically you shouldn't have this kind of a thing in your tent, but people do because they're cold. And, like, they'd seen accidents before. And I mean, it's a fuel stove, so, like, there's fuel, which means it's going to burn hotter and longer. And like Kate said, she said it was her sister, and I think gave a fake name as well.
Yeah, it was all just kind of.
And so, like, she had, like, did she have fake IDs for those names? Whatever, I don't know. I would assume so. And she had changed her name so many times and since then. And the city felt so bad, like the town felt so bad for her that they offered to bury her sister in their town free of charge. So, like, there were no remains for her to deal with to take back home, and she didn't have to go back home ever again if she didn't want to where everyone knew her. So checking in for a murder. All good. Okay, bye. But yeah, it was, like I said, it was an interesting story as far as, like, I do think a person who would kill that many members of their family, like, that story would be something more of what I would read, because that would be more like a murder mystery or a thriller, which is what I typically read, whereas the plot is more of a literary novel. And I am not a huge literary reader.
Yeah. Well, and it fascinated me, the, like, snippets of the book within the book that we get to see as it's kind of explaining the plot along the way. It's written in such a weird manner that it really felt to me like it should have, the way it was written, the parts we got to read, more like it was a novella or something. But it's like, page 108, this happens. So I'm like, how did we... The writing style was just kind of, I know they have to give us the information in short bursts, but it was just kind of an interesting.
Well, it's because we don't actually want to read in a 300-page book inside of a 300-page book.
It totally is. I get why there's certain things they have to do. It just kind of brings you out of the believability for some of
we had to, yeah, it did. Because it's like, well, what else would be in that book? Because, like,
yeah,
we've got all the plot here. So what's the rest of it? But it was interesting as far as, like, again, the topics that it brought to us. I mean, here we are still talking about it.
Yes.
You know, I think if it was written from the woman's perspective, like the murderer's perspective, it wouldn't have been as interesting because she would have known all along. If it was written from a detective following the trail, that would be interesting. I would enjoy that probably more than what I did. Well, maybe not, because having the writer's perspective is what made it interesting.
It was, and he acts as detective, piecing together the mystery for us. So you don't even need, it was basically like, I felt like I got a lot of things out of this. I got a little bit of a mystery, him playing detective, And then you get all the background of him stealing this plot and the interesting like background into what the literary world looks like. So I was intrigued.
Personally,
I mean, you could genders and make it interesting, and I would have read that too. But
personally, I would prefer a less obvious murderer, like someone who had it been like his agent, like someone who wasn't in the story the whole time, because from like the 30% mark, his girlfriend showed up and she was in the rest of the book, and she was very suspicious to me. Not to him because he's stupid, but
right.
So
she's
dumb,
the biggest other character. It's like, it would have been a little bit more intriguing, but I also think that might be why, if this is translated and if this is adapted, she sold the rights, so it's fine to do. If this is adapted, I think it'll be a lot more interesting visually, where I bet they'll put some characters earlier on in there so that are around for longer than just the wife, because that's what made it so.
Like, in a story like this, that it's going to be someone that he knows.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like the only person that he ever talked to.
Yeah.
Because he was so reclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was going to be her regardless.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been more interesting had it been like his agent or just like really anybody else.
Yeah, I kept kind of hoping that maybe the student had faked his death, and like this was going to be his big sequel. Was like him doing all this stuff. I did like that at one point Jacob is like, now I get to control the narrative and I'll release another New York Times bestseller where I tracked all of this down and I can release her real story and what she's done and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude's about to die. That was at like the 85% mark. And he's still like, I'm going to be
eating his soup, thinking about how he's going to write the next bestseller. No, you ain't.
He was
you eating the soup. You're eating the soup, dude. You're going to die. I have like, I kept doing the math to like figure out how old his girlfriend was or his wife was. And just like try to figure it out. But then I did not expect the mother to kill the daughter. Like that plot was a surprise to me when that happened. And it was also originally very nonchalant. Like in the book that he wrote, all he knew was that the mother had killed the daughter. He didn't know how. So in his book, he just wrote that like they got into a fight and the mother went out to dig a hole. And that was where she was going to put her daughter at the end of the night.
After she accidentally like pulled her back and her daughter died. Like it was an accident almost in his version, like kind of an accident. Like she pulled harder and like she definitely, and then her daughter hit something and fell. And
yeah, it was like very like just like put in and then taken back. Like here's this thing, but it's not really there.
Yeah.
And so it was just very different. And so like for me, when that happened, I was like, wow, I hadn't expected that. And I was kind of upset because I actually liked the daughter. Like
I liked the daughter too. Yeah.
I liked her. How old was the daughter when the mother killed her parents? I would say under 1.
Yeah. And the only reason it's hard to place the wife's / mother her age is because there's several time jumps in the like main storyline, not the book, but the main storyline. So it's kind of hard to tell when this happens.
Yeah, because like he's teaching at the school and then there's like a 3-year time jump and he finds out that the student never wrote it. And then there's like a 2 or 3 year time jump where you find out that like he's
the New York Times
now.
Yeah.
And then you're like trying to figure out, well, like if it was Evan, which I think Evan was the name of was it Peter Evan? I don't know, whatever his name was.
Oh my God.
The brother. He had 2 first names, whatever his name was.
Evan Parker Evan.
Evan Parker Evan. That's one of the names of the chapters. Because he never talks about like, I think it was an older sister, but also it might have been a younger sister. And
Yeah.
then like she was only 15 when she was pregnant and had this kid. So like she's also very young, and like trying to do all of the math, I think, is what was supposed to make it hard for us to
Confusing.
figure it out. And I think the daughter in the story was either younger or older than the daughter in real life.
Yeah.
Like there was a difference. I think in the story she let her go to college early, but in real life she didn't go until she was 18, or maybe
Yeah.
vice versa. So like there was a lot of like number, and so you're trying to do the math to figure out how his wife is the person, but you know it's her. Like you don't know how you know it. You know that she's definitely the one that's threatening him, but you don't know how exactly she's connected to the story or why.
You don't know that she's the mom until you get a little bit farther and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
she will kill him. So obviously she has to be. Like that's really when you start to be like, oh, wait a second. And the thing about she should have killed I think she really didn't mean to kill. I don't know that she ever planned to kill the daughter. Like that was not I'm going to let this daughter go to this age and then I'm going to kill her. Like her parents was because they trapped her and were terrible to her. And she's like, you know what? If we all go, we all go. And I always kind of wonder if she's like, got a little taste of that. And so then when her daughter was terrible and ungrateful and all these things that she called her, she was like, you know what? I know what I'm gonna do. So when they're driving down to college, that's when she decides to do it. She talks about how they were never loving to each other and all this stuff, and her daughter wanted nothing to do with her and blah blah blah. So it's after that she kind of kills based off of how it comes up. Like she never planned to kill the brother until the brother was like, I'm gonna sell your story. And then she's like, oh, you have to die. And then she was never gonna kill Jake until he
started doing all the research. Yeah.
And he starts doing research and she's like, okay, you're going to die now and I'm going to take the money from this story. So it's kind of like anyways, intriguing. It was interesting. She was the most interesting character.
She was definitely the most interesting character because she was like 5 different characters all in one.
Yeah.
And so it was like I said, it was an interesting read, and like it's not something that I think is going to change your life, but I think it's a book that you can recommend to everyone. Like within our circle, like if you're like a regular reader or a writer, I think that you can get something out of it as far as like the whole plot theft debate.
Yeah.
But it's and there are very few books that I say that you could like recommend to everyone fairly safely.
Yeah, I think anyone could get something out of this. It's just interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's all of my questions. Let me check my banners.
Okay. I was like, we did it.
Yep, that's everything I got. That's all of my questions. I was prepared. I had questions.
You crushed it. I think that's why we made it to 2 hours without
one of us being like, are we done yet?
Yeah.
Are we done? Okay. Have we made it to an hour and a half yet? Can we leave yet? Okay, we're able to leave now. Speaking of like questions and things, feel free to reach out to myself or Kate and leave any kind of topic ideas that you would like to see us discuss as this year moves on. We did kind of discuss possibly talking about our CP experience since we're CPing for each other. Yeah. Probably not next month, but maybe April. Maybe not April, but it's in there. It's a future topic
for sure.
So if you have a topic, feel free to reach out to either of us on our multiple social media platforms. We have all of the things. Any final comments, questions, or concerns for you, Kate, or from the audience?
None from me. We crushed it. I had so much fun talking about this with everyone. It was a blast.
You know what we didn't crush?
Oh.
We didn't pick our next book.
Yeah. I thought about that as we were at the beginning. I was like, oh no. But
we didn't talk about a book. We'll pick a book and we'll post it on the social medias. Not that anyone ever reads the book with us. It's just us reading the book and then spoiling it for everyone. But I'm okay with that.
I am too. Yeah.
Like I have a great time. So we're having fun. And
if you like spoilers, you can have fun with us.
I love spoilers for thrillers. Not always, but like ones that have like if I'm not sure if I want to read it or not, or if I've read from that author before and I was like, I love spoilers for those.
Especially then, yeah.
Because I'll read a book if I know how it ends. I mean, I reread books all the time. I rewatch movies all the time. I don't care. Regina says we save her a lot of reading time. I mean, you're not wrong. Also, if you guys have a suggestion for a book that you would like us to read, you can always send us that as well.
Bonus points now if it's topical in some way.
If it's a book we can get a topic out of,
we'll
love you forever. I think this was like, once someone had told me what the book was about, I was like, we have to read this for the chat. Like, we have to.
That's what I think you messaged immediately, and we're also like, we should do this for January or something. Like, you had all like, you got to do a spooky book and then a cute book and then and then I have January, February planned. Got to do it.
But I feel like, was this the best book we read? No, because the best book we read was Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
So good.
She reigns supreme. But it's definitely like, it's in like the upper half for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. For sure. This is what we'll have to do, a re-ranking at the end.
A re-ranking at the end of this year to put in all of our books, and because it was a great time. I'm gonna choke on my own spit and die. I say that a lot about people as I hang up the phone at work. Like, people that really peeve me off, and I'm like, I hope they choke on their own spit and die, which is a terrible thing to say about people, but sometimes you're just really mad. And I'm like, that's how I'm gonna grow. Like, I've wished it on so many people that will be how I go.
Someone somewhere's wishing that on you now.
I know. I'm trying to switch it to when I was in high school and I was a lot nicer. I still was not nice, but I was a lot nicer. And so I would wish that like the person that aggravated me, that they would move really far away, be really happy, and I would never have to see them again.
Oh, that's a much sweeter. That's good for both of you.
Yeah, it's better than I hope you choke on your own spit and die. So, you know, just smidge better.
Or you just wish them like every red light on the way home. That's when I'm like, I'm just gonna make your day shitty. Every red light.
Every red light.
If you live in
depends on where you live.
Cows cross the road and you're stuck. I've had that happen.
The light will never change. You're just sitting at a red light forever.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I've got. Do you have anything else, ma'am?
Nope, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
My heart is so hollow, the blood has an echo inside of my veins.